Even though the Dollar Tree has raised their prices again, there are still so many great deals to be had. In this video, I'm going to share with you guys my top ways using primarily Dollar Tree items that you can create beautiful, timeless pieces for your space if you're on a budget. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Incorporating wovens into your space is a really great way to add texture, especially if you have an overall pretty neutral palette. But because it's so trendy right now, it's often quite expensive. So one material I like to use from the Dollar Tree are these woven boxes. Now these are fine as boxes, but there are definitely things that you can make with this material that I think can be a little bit more functional because these are quite small. Just remove the clasp piece as well as just peel back on that woven material from the wood pieces that create the shape of a box. Now you can find lamps to cover anywhere, but I personally love the thrift store because you can find lamps super inexpensively, especially if you're gonna have to change it anyhow. So this lamp was just $2 at my Goodwill, and all we're gonna do with this lamp here is just wrap the entire thing with this woven material. For the shade, I decided I wanted to make a pleated lampshade. So in order to do that, I just went in sections. Folding the material onto itself and then cinching it at the top will create these nice pleats that we will then place all around this white lampshade. In order to keep these pleats in place, you could do one of two things. The first option would be to sew it in place. However, I opted to just use some super glue gel, also from the Dollar Tree, just to make sure that everything did stay nice and in place and wouldn't be as visible as something like hot glue might be. I did use hot glue to attach my sections onto the actual lampshade, making sure that everything is nice and even throughout. Now, if all you need is a shade and you like your base of your lamp, you can stop here. But because this is really not my style, this bright hot pink, I did just decide to spray paint it with just some spray paint that I had on hand, just in case you would be able to see that pink poking through. I wanted it to be more neutralized, so I will link the spray paint that I use in the description box below. After the sealer then dried, I then just took the tape off so I could apply that final piece of material to the base. In order to do that, I just used the wood glue from the Dollar Tree and it worked perfectly, stayed nice and in place, and also dries clear. I ended up using 4.5 of these little woven boxes to create this lamp. Even at affordable retailers like Target, something like this would cost much more. So if you're able to shop at the Dollar Tree, maybe use some of that material in an unexpected way, you can create a super similar look on a budget. Another idea in this category is to just make a large scale shade. So I've been loving these glass lamps with just either a linen shade, but I really love it if it does have a woven shade. At the thrift store, I found this really beautiful glass lamp base. Unfortunately, it did not have a shade, which would have made this project go by so much quicker, but because it didn't, I decided I needed to make a custom woven shade for this lamp base. For the hoop base, you could use anything. I just had this in my stash. It's just a wooden wreath base. This one particularly is 12 inches, and I'm just going to start off by, again, taking the wood glue from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to clip sections of the boxes into place so that way everything is lining up really well. I ended up using 3.5 of these boxes, which worked out perfectly because I had just enough left over from the first project. In order to make this a functional lampshade, I needed to take a fitter because that is the type of shade I would need for that glass base. So I just found this one in my stash, cut it down to size using my needle nose pliers. But before I attach anything together, I still felt that it just didn't look super finished. And also in my stash, I believe I picked this up at the Goodwill bins. It's just some finishing trim that you can put on exposed wood sections or particle board sections that you don't want to see. It just gives a more finished look. So I thought that maybe just wrapping this around both the top and the bottom would give it an overall more finished appearance. Because I only had one of those wooden wreath bases, I just decided to sew these into place so that way it looked nice and seamless, and when everything is covered with that finishing trim, it will just look like everything was connected in one solid piece. secured everything together with wood glue, and then all that was left to do is then now just attach that spider fitter to the base of this shade. I also decided to stain everything just the same color, so it just created a more unified appearance. Because I already had so many of the supplies on hand, this shade really only cost $5, and I think it looks great with this glass base. And the same really goes for the thrift store. Now, sometimes you can get lucky and find a piece that is really great quality, just could benefit from a really deep clean and disinfectant. This woven tray at places like Pottery Barn would be a small fortune. However, more often than not, you do find a lot of woven material, especially that is damaged in some way. Either the handles are broken or something has snapped off, but that provides you an opportunity. Like this little box was broken, but that's a lot of really great seagrass material that you can then repurpose and turn into something else. I love these really beautiful round pin boards from Pottery Barn, from McGee & Co., but they're super expensive, and the ones from Dollar Tree are they're just a little bit sad, and they're a little bit small, but they're also only $1.25. But we can take other Dollar Tree things like this hula hoop and some poster board from the Dollar Tree to create a more large scale pin board. Starting off with our hula hoop, first things first, we have to remove that metallic sticker. It's really easy to do. Once you just start to get one of those pieces off, you can pretty much just pull back on the whole thing in order for us to get a clean finish when we apply our woven material. So in order to apply this, I'm just wrapping it around, never cutting it, just applying it with some hot glue, wrapping it about every 3 to 4 sections before adding any additional glue. Once the entire hoop form is covered, it's just time now to add our fabric onto the poster board. So I had this flax fabric left over again in my stash that I thrifted for $1, just traced around and then took an X-Acto knife and removed the section that I would need for our poster board. Before attaching the fabric, I did just press it with an iron so there were no wrinkles. Now to attach the fabric onto the poster board, I personally just like to use a spray adhesive. This is just a really forgiving medium, so if you mess up, if there's a wrinkle or a bubble, you can just simply peel back on it and then really press it into place when you're happy with how it's laying. Last minute decision I made, I found this piece in my stash and I thought it might be a little bit more interesting if it was hanging from the wall from this rod here. So I did temporarily separate the hoop in order to make sure that that was going to fit inside that piece that we added. All that was left to do was just remove any of the excess fabric and then screw that bracket into place. Round woven pin boards can be so expensive. So if you're able to just use things that you already have, make a quick trip to the Dollar Tree. It's amazing what you can create with a hula hoop and some poster board. Faux potted plants from places like Pottery Barn can be really expensive. So I wanted to see exactly how much would it really cost to try to make something very similar. So I found this planter here. So at my Goodwill outlet, all of the glassware items are 50 cents per pound. I also found this fern garland, as well as these branch stems. So to start, I'm just going to take this planter here. So if you want to alter it in any way, now would be the time to do so. Because I found a fern garland and not stems, I just needed to remove those fern leaves there and attach them to the stems that I did find. Just going to mix up some cement because when you're looking at the faux plants from Pottery Barn or even through the Hearth and Hand line, there is a cement layer at the bottom to keep the stems in place. Just mixing that until I get a pancake-like batter consistency and then just cleaning off the excess. Again, we don't want this to look like a DIY project. We want this to look really nice and really finished as if it was made in a factory. Laying some tape down in order to keep the stems from falling over and everything will stay nice and upright. Another thing you'll notice at the tops of these faux potted plants from these places like Pottery Barn and Target, they have almost like a faux dirt. So the closest thing I found was at Dollar Tree. You can find these small pebbles here. Just going to make those as small as they possibly can be to give that faux dirt effect. Of course, it's not identical, but for something that looks pretty similar and just about $5, I think it is a major savings if you're on a budget. I also really love to add wall vases when it's appropriate. So I ended up finding this picture frame here at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to remove the frame section. I'm gonna save it, put it in my stash, might need it for another project in the future. And then I also found this ribbed planter here that's just $1.25. The one thing that I needed to do to this in order for it to be attached to the wall was just make some small holes on both the top and the bottom. So then that way this will be able to sit flush against the wall, but then also this planter will be able to sit inside of it. Totally optional, but I did decide to paint mine. Now, because I wanted mine to have a more antique brass look, I first like to go in with some brass spray paint, then I will go in with a metallic bronze spray paint, and then we're just going to finish it off with some antiquing wax that we're going to primarily focus on the top and the bottom of this planter here. Keep in mind the weight. This wire isn't that heavy despite being screwed into the wall, so I wouldn't put cement in a project like this one. Wall vases can be quite expensive, so the fact that this was just $2.50 is a major savings. So there's a lot of really great things coming out at Dollar Tree, and I've been sharing some of those pieces with you, but these specifically I would say pass, because yes, that seems like such a great deal when you compare it to things like from Pottery Barn, for example. You can definitely find much larger and cheaper glass pumpkin jars from the thrift store. I find these all the time. There are so many things you can do with them. You can turn them into a candle, you can turn them into a vase, you can put a flameless candle in there. You can also do fairy lights. You could use it for a simmer pot mix. And of course you can use it for food, which these containers, unfortunately, beyond being that it is a candle, otherwise you'll just have a really tiny little jar that maybe, yes, you can put some small like rings or something like that in there, but these are so much larger and you get so much bang for your buck if you shop secondhand in this case. And furthermore, you can create something that looks even more beautiful, in my opinion, for a lot less by shopping secondhand. I found both of these here for just $4 a piece, and then I had a 35% off coupon, so bringing the overall cost down significantly. Because I can use these for food, I'm gonna stick to that and keep that as its intention. But if you wanted to turn this into a candle, I found this never used Yankee candle scented for fall for less than $1 at the Goodwill bins, and you can create something for under $5 that looks way better than the one from Dollar Tree. But at the Dollar Tree, you can often get really great base pieces and you can turn them into whatever it is you're really looking for. So I probably would never put these up on my wall as like actual decor. Same with these, I would never put this as like its substitute for a wreath, but I can use these maybe as like little coasters or maybe little bookends or something like that. So taking these apart, I'm going to take the two larger pumpkins from this section here, and then I'm also grabbing two of those maple leaves from the Dollar Tree. Started off by just sanding these down just to primarily remove the color before we go in and add all of our distressing. So if you've been following me, it's no surprise to you that I love a really primitive look. So to start with these, I'm just going to paint them with some taupe acrylic paint before then going in and really further distressing them. So you can do this in so many different ways. I just generally use a flathead screwdriver and just make more indentations to give it a more aged and weathered look. So I know this look is definitely not for everybody, and some people really like everything in their space to feel brand new and store-bought, but it's having these wood old chippy pieces that really tell a story and give your space a lot of depth and character. After the taupe paint, I generally like to go in with some antiquing wax and then further distress the ends with some dark brown acrylic paint just to give a more authentic feel. If ever you're on McGee & Co. or Pottery Barn's site, anything that says found or reclaimed is automatically going to be much, much more expensive. And you can definitely find those pieces at the thrift store. However, my favorite resource lately to find these really primitive pieces is either the antique store or using Facebook Marketplace. One thing I've really been looking to have in my space is a table for me to do all of my projects on. So when I came across this one, they kept coming down on the price and it would have almost been free until I had to pay for someone to deliver it because it wasn't going to fit in my car. Despite a lot of the cosmetic imperfections, it actually was a very sturdy table, which is ideally what I want. I want something to be sturdy, but I also want it to be weathered and aged, which is actually kind of hard to find both of those things in the same piece of furniture. As much as I love a lot of the distressing, I still like it to feel a little bit more refined. Went in with some 60 grit sandpaper. Using my electric sander is a lifesaver for projects like these because it really expedites the process. Then just taking my shop vac now, and I'm just going to remove any of the dust that might be remaining before bringing it inside. Pieces that look just like this from McGee & Co., from Shop Amber Interiors, are a small fortune. So the fact that I was able to find this on Facebook, they were literally giving it away had I not had to pay for the delivery, but still such a major savings when you compare it to anything you'll find on any high-end website. But you can still create pieces like this using Dollar Tree materials. So I love these bowl planters. They just feel very weathered and aged, and you can create something super similar using molds from the Dollar Tree. So grab 2 of these bowls from their catering party section. They're $1.25 still a piece. Make sure to spray either WD-40 or olive oil spray something, so then that way your cement mold can be released easily. Just gonna mix that up. This is just the leftover cement that I had from the fern project, and I'm just going to place one of these into another after placing the cement inside to create a cement bowl shape. To keep it in place, I did decide to just put something heavy in there that wasn't going to crack the plastic, but enough so to stabilize it. So I just used this can of wax. After about an hour or so, the quick setting cement just needed to be removed from that mold there. So I just did so very carefully. And if your molds don't crack, you can definitely just make several of these and place them all around your space and use them in different capacities. So the first thing I wanted to do was just smooth it out quite a bit because, again, I love that primitive look, but I still want it to feel refined. So just giving it a scuff sand with some 80 grit sandpaper, giving it an overall just more finished, smoother look. And then to distress it, I'm just going to take a damp paper towel with some antiquing wax, primarily focusing on both the top rim there as well as the base. Doing that just gives an overall realistic look. If you were to have a true found or reclaimed cement bowl, this is where those darkened areas would be. You can place those black river stones that you can also find at the Dollar Tree. Place those in here. You can get super close to the Pottery Barn look, or you can just use this as a catch-all bowl, use it as a planter. I also found this really sweet glazed planter from the thrift store that, again, just gives a uniqueness to your space. Now, I didn't like the faux florals that it came with, so I just decided to remove them. And again, not needing to reinvent the wheel, I can just use this in a different way. So I found these Cozy Place candles. Now, these are sold the exact same ones at Dollar General for $5, and they're still just $1.25 at Dollar Tree. So if you see this brand anywhere, their candles smell amazing. Make sure you grab these while they're in stock. So the container that these come with is absolutely fine, but we can give it a more elevated look by putting it in this planter instead. So I just like to do this on my stovetop, bring it to a boil, and then turn it to simmer until all of the wax is then melted. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to release those wicks, so I ended up having to pull some from my stash, and I ended up doing 3 just because I feel that gives a more high-end look overall anyway. Trim your wicks down, and I think you have a really custom look on a budget. In addition to the candles, I also found these wax melts. So again, the exact same ones at Dollar General are $5, at Dollar Tree, still just $1.25. Also at Dollar Tree, again in the catering section, I found this acrylic caddy here. It is $5, but anything comparable on Amazon is much more. So I did purchase this. I can see this being used for makeup. Of course, you can use it as its original purpose, which is for silverware if you're hosting. But I also thought it would make a really cute little cleaning caddy by my kitchen sink. So grabbing our little Dollar Tree kitchen towels, as well as a sponge I found in my stash. Also, under my kitchen sink, I found both of these amber bottles, so we're just gonna clean these off, make one for dish soap, one for hand soap, just make it look more aesthetically pleasing. They fit perfectly inside the slots here, and what's really nice is this doesn't take up that much space and it can be really practical. So I also love this multi-purpose cleaner from the Dollar Tree. Just going to remove the label because it's not my favorite. I also found this cute little bag in the bath section of Dollar Tree, so I'm gonna put these wax melts inside of there. I just reshaped them so they look nicer and they fit in the wax melt better. Spending just 10 minutes to create little systems that are functional like this, that look nice enough to sit out, is a really great way to update your space if you're on a budget. With all that being said, that really wraps it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments which hack or find or project was your favorite, and thank you guys so much for responding to my question in my last video. Sounds like a lot of you guys still really love the Dollar Tree too, so we can definitely start incorporating more videos like this in the rotation. With all that being said, I hope everybody has a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here next Sunday. Bye for now.